For years, a debate has raged within the Crusader Kings 3 community. Where is the best start location to play tall? Some people are going to go with Brittany. There's a lot of people that might say Ireland. I know there's Dutch fans out there, and I'm one of them. But today, I'm going to show you the monumental power of playing as a little tiny island kingdom. Today, we're dialing back our aspirations as far as land grabs go, and we are going to stick to this one kingdom island the entire game, or as much as we possibly can. And let me tell you, the way that the world is going to transform, I'll show you. We're going to go from this to this in this game. And I'm going to show you exactly how I did it with our lovely Prince Aegon here. I am not that creative when it comes to naming characters. You'll see me later on name one of my daughter's doorknob. Right off the bat, what are we trying to do here? What are our goals? You always got to ask yourself when you're playing Crusader Kings. And our goal is to just play as tall as humanly possible. Now, the map is limited to India only. So even if I do later on get aspirations of conquering, there is a hard limit for as far as I can go. The first handful of years are arguably the most important for playing tall because your neighbors are going to test you. They're going to pry and prod and try to find where your weak points are. Now, defending Sri Lanka is really easy because it is detached. That's one of the reasons why I chose this island to begin with. It is really easy to defend because they're going to get a crossing penalty anytime somebody tries to come across. So it's going to make it super easy to defend, especially when later on my neighbor, of course, becomes a conqueror. So we're going to have to deal with that. But right off the bat, what you should always do is make sure you have a big enough military to defend yourself. Check your neighbors, look at, number one, how many troops they have, but maybe more importantly, what kind of troops they have. So for example, I'm playing in India. Later on in the game, people in India are gonna have elephants in their military. Now that sounds pretty much indefensible. What do you do against war elephants? Because you see, I'm of the Czech culture. So I don't have elephants, I don't have any of the troops for defending or attacking in this subcontinent. So there's a troop type called Pikas in this game that are extremely overpowered because they get a men-at-arms advantage in jungle, and most of India is jungle and farmland and forest, and I don't have access to that. And if this wasn't hard enough already, I actually made it even harder on myself. And I made defense 10 times more important. I'm playing with a mod called Siege Destruction, which essentially tanks the development anytime a province goes under siege. You actually get to set the number that it devastates it, and I set it to the maximum. So what happens sometimes, there's a random chance, there's an RNG chance that it's siege devastation, but it's a pretty high chance that when a province gets sieged down, number one, its development drops by 20 points, and there's a chance that every building will be destroyed or disabled in that province. So if defense wasn't already important, it's even more important in this game because if I get invaded and somebody sacks my capital, it's gonna set me back decades possibly because the devastation is so severe. So early on in the game, again, I'm going to be focusing on my military, but simultaneously you'll see me struggling to even find a wife because I have such low legitimacy and such low stats and standing in the world that nobody wants to marry me. And my only options for marriage all lower my prestige. So this is always a really kind of hard trade-off in the early game. Do I get a genius, amazing wife and take the legitimacy hit? Or do I marry, like a princess and get a ton of legitimacy and prestige, but she's not gonna have very good stats for my kids? Now, if you're playing in a place like Europe where that matters a little bit more, my suggestion is that you do marry the princess, you get that legitimacy, and then when it comes to your kid, you can marry your kid off to the most genius person on the map because your kid's going to take that legitimacy hit, but the AI is going to work to get that back up, that AI character, aka your son or daughter. So I would say skip a generation and go for the genius for your son. Now, I don't do that for this character because I realize that no matter who I married, my prestige was going to drop and my legitimacy was going to drop. So I just said, fuck it. I might as well marry the best people. But I'm actually going to be juggling that a lot in the early game, because if I marry one more person and take on a secondary spouse, it is going to tank my legitimacy and make me an illegitimate ruler, which is really not what you want, even though I don't really have that many vassals. And here is the first jump scare of the entire game. Look at that. What are the odds that this conqueror spawns right next to me, dude? Right next to me. I mean, we're only 5 years into this run. This is the first time that the game has checked for conquerors. And of course, it's my neighbor. So what do? What are your options here? Now, in India, this isn't as big of a deal, especially deep South India, because there's a lot of pacifist faiths. I'm not going to get too into it, but obviously you can assume that a pacifist faith is going to not go to wars often. Now, what you see me do is I immediately ask my bishop to get a claim on that county that guy controls. So the best way to deal with a conqueror is to just deal with them early on. And side note, my wife dies here. My genius wife that I lost all my prestige for. She died, and my genius daughter died with it. This was such a huge hit in the beginning. I took so long to find this wife. I was writing up like pros and cons sheets here, and just for her to die with the very first child, that was so unfortunate. So I basically just go through and say, hey, whatever, I'm just gonna marry whoever at this point, because I don't really care. That was so devastating. But again, when you're dealing with conquerors, the best way to do it is deal with them as early as possible. Keep them tied up in endless wars. You can't let them snowball. Once they take over 2 or 3 duchies, form a kingdom, and then, God forbid, if they form 2 kingdoms, you're fucked. You are gonna have an extremely hard time defending that, especially if you're a little dude like me, King Aegon, and you're focused on stewardship. You're not going out there fighting conquerors, dude. I hate to tell you, you are not that guy. So you need to deal with the threat immediately as fast as possible, which is why I am going all in on my military early on, and I'm trying to form a claim on that title that the conqueror currently has, because if you vassalize them, then they will eventually lose the conqueror trait after not being able to attack long enough. And then my plan is to just give the land to one of my kids or something like that. But early on in the game, this is very, very, very scary for me. There's 2 really big advantages with playing this start location too, and those 2 things are 2 buildings actually. One, in the center of Sri Lanka is this really, really powerful mine that you can continue to upgrade, and you'll see those later buffs are absolutely insane. In the beginning you get about plus 10 development, but you can bump that up to plus 35 development later on. Plus, it gives you a shitload of money. At some point in this game, you're gonna see that this one singular mine in this county basically makes up half of my entire economy. And the other thing is that in your capital, you spawn with a university already built, which is fantastic. As soon as you start getting tons of money, and I mean tons, because later on in the game it's going to cost me $4,000 every single time I want to send my kids to university, but you can basically do it right away. You see, this is the year 878, and I can already start sending my kids to university if I want to, which is super powerful when it comes to training your offspring. So for a while, the essence of tall gameplay really sets in, where you're collecting money, you're building buildings. Really, I'm focusing on upgrading my quarries and also getting trade ports up. Trade ports, if you have the ability to build trade ports, just do it. That is the first, second, and third thing you should totally be building if you're playing tall. It does great for development and your economy. But I'm trying to hold court as much as humanly possible, because the second thing you want to do when you're playing tall is hybridize your culture. But essentially, the way you progress through your cultural innovations is by taking the average number of development for your culture. So if your culture is one singular county and it's at 50 development, then it's going to move forward that fast. But say there is a county with 100 development and a county with 0 development, then it's also going to average out to around 50. Now that's fine, but as you'll see from the map, my entire culture is the island of Sri Lanka, but when I hybridize it, it's actually going to narrow down to only 1 or 2 counties. And when it does that, I can get the average number of development way, way higher because I can focus on less counties. So say there's 3 or 4 counties that have my culture, I'm really gonna pinpoint those and focus on improving that development because you can get ludicrously quick innovations doing it this way. Sometimes it takes 100, 200 to like 50 years to get a new innovation. Halfway through this game, I'm discovering shit in like 12 years. I mean, I get so far ahead of the AI, it's absolutely ridiculous, and I do it in not that, long of a time span. And I do it by hybridizing my culture very early on because the Czech culture has the industrious trait and city builder or castle builders, and then the Shinhala culture has city builders, which is fantastic. Plus, you also get the fantastic military benefits of getting war elephants and pikas, which is just incredible because I also get to keep the old Czech man-at-arms. So you see here, my development is only 15. It's actually one of the lowest on the entire map right now, but that will change very quickly now that my culture is hybridized. And the industrious trait, or the industrious tenant, makes it so when you build buildings, it continues to boost the development. And there is rarely a time in this playthrough where we are not building some type of building. And I realized really early on, one of the things that I need to do is basically completely control the entire island and essentially have no major vassals. So I took a gamble and I tried revoking the title of this theocratic realm because they basically held half the holdings on the entire island, and they rebelled, which doesn't sound like that big of a deal until I'm thinking during this game that I can't siege down my enemies when they're in my territory because, like I said, the siege penalties in this game are extreme. If I siege down this vassal's holdings, which are my holdings, the development is going to drop to literally 0. And that's going to be super hard to claw my way back from. So you see me here, number 1 priority, get them the fuck away from my capital. I cannot have them sack my capital. And then essentially I'm going to hope and pray that I can fight enough battles to capture the war leader rather than have to siege down anything. And in the end, this ended up being a little bit more difficult than I anticipated, and this war stretched on for 2 years before the war score finally ticked up to 100% and I was able to revoke this title that I fought 2 years to get. But in the end, of course, I did not siege down any of my holdings, and we just ended up fighting like 19 battles, and we just had to wait for the war score to tick up. And what I'm going to do for a while here is look for promoting legends because I have a +3 to a +6% on development for everywhere this legend spreads to, and it's really nice because I only need it to spread to my island. So truthfully, I don't need to worry too much about getting my legend to spread overseas or in other counties and other countries because we're just focused on Sri Lanka here. So I can just keep stacking these legend developments on top of each other. So +3 to +6 doesn't sound like that much, but if I continuously stack these development modifiers and I have 3 or 4 of them, it's going to be a lot more than just +6. The other thing I'm going to shoot for each one of my characters is going down 2 lanes in the perk trees. The first one is getting whole of body, obviously just so you can live longer and not deal with succession laws or anything like that, which you can see I already have. But I'm also going down the left side of the stewardship tree. Now, not all of the stewardship tree is really that important for playing tall. I know it's a little bit counterintuitive, but getting planned cultivation in the learning tree is important, and centralization under the architect's tree. Other than that, I'm pretty much just going to stick to the left side because the middle column, unless you go for the architect trait, a lot of that stuff in the tree is not going to matter too much other than centralization. You really just want to stick to the left side of the stewardship tree, which is what I'm going to do for 99% of the characters I have in this game. Until the last guy, you'll see why. And surprisingly enough, this early on in the game, we can already see the benefits of hybridizing. Our culture, only 1 generation in, is already ahead of literally every other culture on the entire map. But as the life of Prince Aegon comes to an end, we begin to prepare the world for our next ruler, who is also going to be OP. But we really just want to sit here and reflect on what we've accomplished so far in 1 lifetime. Skyrocketed the development all the way up to 30. And my kid is a genius, so that is going to continue going up. I believe my culture for the first time in the game is the highest, just as you can see up in the top left corner, the real conqueror. This guy, well, you'll see later on, this guy's going to be very important to the rest of the playthrough. But I can see the writing on the wall. I'm like, oh shit. He's going to conquer everything, and I'm going to have to defend the island at some point, I bet. So my old ass is not going to deal with that. That is something for the next guy to deal with. And at the ripe age of 81, King Aegon comes to an end. And now Drainslow. It's up to Drainslow, who's 55. He doesn't have the best stats. And honestly, I'm a lot more obsessed with Drainslow's kid than I am with him. Now, the one thing Drainslow is going to be known for is expanding the territory for the first time. I figured it's not cheating if it's also another island chain. I just wanted another duchy to build and develop, and also I needed something for Drainslow to do. So I was like, it makes sense to just take over this the only other island chain in the entire world map here at this point, because again, the entire world map is only India, so basically every little piece of land is going to become more and more valuable as time goes on, and basically every development is going, or every single province is going to get developed. So we're attempting a risky amphibious assault here, but this island, there's no way it can hold up against us. And per usual, it's more complicated than that. Like I said before, if I'm taking over territory, I really don't want to siege it down, but in this situation, the development is already at 4, so it's not going to be a huge loss if I siege this province down and get it to 100% war score. I figured the risk is worth the reward in this particular situation, since the development is already atrociously low, basically. And we do get the island. So finally, Lanka is just a little bit bigger. And with the county expansion, we take this opportunity to reforge our realm into the kingdom of the future. How we want to be known from now on, because from this moment on, Sri Lanka, aka the future, the kingdom of the future, is a beacon of hope in this world where conquerors are prevalent and development is dropping by the second. And after 7 short years and a soon completed legend that he actually inherited from his father, the story of Drainslow finally comes to a close. He renamed the realm, he expanded the realm, and aside from that, that's pretty much all he did. And the rule of King Aegon II comes into fruition, and let me tell you, this is a glorious and beautiful reign, but first things first, we gotta make our king look a little bit better. And being the intelligent and proactive king that he is, Aegon understands that this conqueror is going to be nothing but trouble, and rather than fighting him, it's possible to ally ourselves to him, and hopefully we can ride out the generations of conquerors without souring the relationship, and eventually maybe we can fuse our realms together. And this is possible because I haven't reformed my faith, so everybody around me has a pretty positive marriage opinion since I am a powerful king at this point, and also adjacent to their faith. But more or less, what I'm trying to do is just marry into his family as much as possible to secure multi-generational alliances. Already you can see that the next king is actually my nephew, so I'm trying to double down on that and marry my nephew off to one of my daughters here. And after some successful marriage proposals and locking down the security of the realm, Aegon II turns his sights onto just spamming out pilgrimages. He decided that it's time for our realm's religion and values to reflect our true values in life, and our current religion is just not doing that. So in order to do it, I just need to spam out as many pilgrimages as humanly possible, and to do that, you want to make them really long. So here's a little tip. If you're trying to gain a bunch of PD by going on pilgrimages, number 1, choose the fastest possible land route. The game by default is going to try to get you to your destination as fast as possible, and that's usually the right way to go. The one situation where that's not the right way to go is when you're trying to get some faith out of it. You get faith by getting those little pop-ups along the route, And basically, every time you get those little pop ups, you just want to go with the option that says, make my pilgrimage more pious. And by that point, you could actually get all the way to, a level 3 or 4 pilgrimage. But what you see here is that we do enough pilgrimages and we're really scoping out how much faith we need in order to perform it, and it's around 4 to 5,000. And after doing, I think it's like 4 or 5 pilgrimages, which is really good with the DLC, because when you customize your route, again, to not go over the sea, but instead to go over land, you can continue to hit points of interest on the way. And a lot of the times you get a free stewardship perk, you get a free martial perk, or even better, a learning perk that can get you to whole of body even quicker. Because the sooner you get the perk whole of body, obviously the longer you're going to live, but you reach a point in the game where aging kicks in. I believe it's around 35. And if you get whole of body before that, it's going to extend the point where the game starts to actually age you. And in true Crusader Kings fashion, we of course go with divine marriage. We're trying to make superhuman offspring and superhuman kids, so I kind of need to be able to do all of that, if you know what I'm talking about. And we also want pacifism. There's a higher chance that we will spread. And monasticism allows us to basically disinherit kids without needing to disinherit our kids. We can send them off to be monks. So there's another way that I can really kind of square up the succession laws, is just asking some of my kids to become monks or something like that. The religion of the Holy Light is born. And since we added the lay clergy option, we can now hold temple holdings, which is insanely powerful. You just saw my domain limit go from 10 to 16. Because now I hold every single church in my realm as well. And for you, those of you who don't know it, churches can produce a ton of money. And a lot of my churches are on the coasts, so I can put trade ports in my churches too, which is awesome. Next up on the checklist for King Aegon II is adopting a centralized administration. So we are paying off unbelievable amounts of bribes here. And we're also asking all of our vassals to convert, because when they do convert, they're going to get a huge favorable opinion of us. A lot of our vassals really don't like us, and that's because they're of different faiths, and once they convert, they're going to like us a whole lot more. I have a shitload of artifacts and money that I don't need, so I'm just giving out random artifacts to people. And in fact, one of the ladies wouldn't convert to my religion, so it actually gave me an imprisonment reason on her, and she was one of the vassals who hated me the most, so I just revoked her title. And as soon as I did that, then she became, not one of my vassals, and I just took her out immediately. And with her gone, I was able to adopt the centralized administration for my realm. One singular kingdom on one singular island. And you can see our gold per month just immediately go up. There's really not a lot of downsides to centralized administration too. You even get these cool little kingdom armies for your kingdom. But it's just amazing. Only, about 100 years into this game, and our development is already at 40. Way higher than anywhere else in the realm, even our neighbors right across the mainlands. Also, this conqueror is helping us, because every time he sieges down a holding, he's tanking the development. And yeah, they are blobbing. I am really, really thanking myself for allying to him ASAP. And I don't know what it was about adopting a centralized administration. Maybe it was the prestige and legitimacy gain. But my neighbor, pretty much only a handful of years after I adopted this form of government, asked to be governed by me. This is the first person in the entire game that has requested vassalization, and I was definitely going to accept. So for the first time, our realm is actually going to stretch outside of the islands, and we're going to get that just little tiny bit of land adjacent to us. As you can see here, I'm asking just basically everybody to convert to the Holy Light that is under me as a vassal, which at this point is only about 2 people on the mainlands. But we're not going to build holdings in their land. We are sticking to the islands. I wasn't going to turn down vassalization. I mean, I wasn't going to be a dick. So here we break the challenge a little bit, but I'm not expanding my borders through warfare. I'm doing it through conniving, administration, and also these people just love me for some reason. Maybe it's because I'm a pacifist, but I don't think I've ever had a character be this liked by basically everybody in the world. And using this strategy, I really start to focus in on all of my neighbors, trying to get them to swear fealty to me too. So I try this through paying up absurd amounts of bribes. Also trying to increase my influence, because you can actually spend influence to accept a vassalization request, which is really nice. I'm trying not to give anybody religious exemption, because that makes everything a little bit more complicated later on. So I'm trying to just get them in for either low feudal obligations or just try to spend as much influence as possible to get them in my realm. But in the end, through using this method, I end up vassalizing 4 or 5 of my neighbors, because after a series of wars, they end up rebelling from this huge conqueror who, at this point, controls about 99% of the entire world. And again, the entire world is just India. But this one conqueror, through, I believe, 3 generations, has basically conquered every piece of land. So that is why also I'm accepting all these vassalization requests, is because if I did not accept these, this dude would conquer all the way up to my backyard, and that is all the way up to the island, essentially. So I'm seeing this as a little bit of a buffer zone, kind of just keeping the tip of India under my control, so this conqueror doesn't get any cheeky ideas and just, immediately try and go for my capital. Now, this is also the point in the gameplay where we hit the fucking speed boosters when it comes to development, because we unlocked windmills. I believe this comes from a Czech innovation where you get it an era early. So since I'm not in the correct tech era, I actually still get to unlock windmills, which is the single best building for development. If you guys are wondering if there's a tier list or you're curious about what the single best building is, it's windmills. 100% of the time it's windmills. Your development is going to absolutely skyrocket once you start installing windmills everywhere. So the order would be windmills first, and then get water mills wherever you can, because they're going to give you a little bit more gold. They're less development focused, but getting those 2 in is like the double trifecta of getting good development. And the third part of that trifecta is getting garden architects. That is the single biggest thing for development, aside from buildings or policies or anything like that. Getting garden architects can give you a flat out +3 development to your capital. It's unbelievable. It's overpowered, and I use it as soon as possible in this game, and I'm going to continue to use it until the last generation. And here's just a little conqueror update, so you can actually visualize how much of the entire world that this one singular family owns. But the nice part is that they're pretty much part of my family now. He's been married to my half-sister for a very long time, and what I'm going to do here is just marry off some of my spare kids, so this guy doesn't absolutely destroy me, even though, I'm going to be honest, I think I could probably take him in a fight if we were to go to war with each other. But just for this playthrough, we're playing pacifist, so we're trying to roleplay a little bit. So we're going to use diplomacy rather than swords in this particular situation. And we'll also do a culture check-in here as we cross the threshold into the high Middle Ages in the year 977. And you can see just how far ahead everybody else has got, like only 2 techs in the early medieval era, and we have 7. So we have just left the AI in the dust. We are the most advanced culture, and it's at this point not even close when it comes to second place. As you can see here, I am already in the high Middle Ages, and everybody else is only about halfway through the early Middle Ages, and this gap is only going to widen. And also in this moment, I just want to appreciate how we're making 44 gold per turn when it comes to our mining city, just from that one city. And my total gold per turn is only 121 at this point. So that one singular holding is giving a significant chunk of our total income to our whole economy here. And it's because of that mine with the water wheels and windmills stacked on top of it. But like all good things, it must come to an end. And King Aegon II, the Mace, his illustrious long reign, he did a lot too. I mean, you can see how much our realm has grown as far as the wideness, but also as far as the tallness. And he ruled for 46 long, beautiful years until succeeding the throne to, you guessed it, Aegon III. Not very creative again, but Aegon III, just like his father, is an absolute fucking genius. So I'm not worried at all about playing as him, especially because I got rid of basically all of his brothers and sisters. But again, it's not that big of a deal because at this point we're an administrative government, so we actually get to keep all of our titles every time we inherit, which is very, very nice. And I think now is the time to bear mention to the third thing that is amazing about this realm, and that is the fact that you get access to a building called blast furnaces. What this does is increase the damage of your station men-at-arms units, and if you continue to upgrade this, the benefits are insane. You see here, the base strength of an elephant is 250. I boosted it all the way to 825 using these blast furnaces. So not only do we have an absolutely huge military, it is stacked when it comes to its damage and toughness, especially because we have a bunch of fucking elephants in there as well. But even my archers and my men-at-arms are just all ridiculously strong because of those blast furnaces. And here's where the second big plot twist of the entire playthrough comes in. Because King Aegon III, he changed his clothes. He wants to look a little bit more mystical and different than his predecessors. But he also wants to go to college a little bit, so he's going to improve his stewardship lifestyle. And he's also going to marry off some more people to the conqueror, who actually just died and his realm shattered. So the big conqueror in the world is now officially gone. And Aegon III is really getting ready to settle in here and build a shitload of, number one, blast furnaces, and number two, a bunch of windmills, when all of a sudden, the game changes forever. We get the Conqueror trait. Prince Aegon is going to have to rethink what he thought his rule would be like, because the gods have come down and blessed him with the ability to conquer the entire known world. And with Aegon III ascending to the throne and being named the Conqueror of India, it's time to retool our entire economy and government to be around warfare. Before, we were just defending, but now it is time to spread our religion and culture around the world and let them know what we've been cooking up over here in the kingdom of the future. What we've been cooking with our blast furnaces. Spoiler alert, it's crazy elephants is what we've been cooking up. We're gonna absolutely steamroll everybody on the map. A big part of this I need to do is replace all of my old siege weapons with the new siege weapons. I also need to fill out all of my military slots because I actually haven't been filling them out fully. So we really just want to make sure that we're not going to get absolutely stack wiped the first couple of times we go out to war here. And as Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility, but also with great power comes a change in your clothes. We want to be more intimidating than spiritual now that we're a conqueror, so Aegon III dons his new attire as he gets ready to set out and conquer the world. And unfortunately, this poor fellow right here is going to get the beginning of our wrath. I have a ton of claims all over the place. I think it's because I entangled my family with the Conqueror's family. So the Conqueror inspired Aegon III. He saw the vision that the lands really could be unified under one rule, under one family. And maybe he was the person to do that. And as you can see here, our elephants actually add siege progress as well. So not only are our siege weapons sieging down buildings, but also our elephants are too. And that results in just lightning speed sieges here. I've pretty much cleaned up this war in a matter of maybe like 1 or 2 years. It really does not take that long. And spoiler alert, most of the wars are going to go this way. And I am just going to skip over most of it because there is not a point where my military is ever threatened. Even when I'm horribly outnumbered, which again, barely ever happens, but even when I am outnumbered, the sheer strength and defensiveness and screen of our guys is just ridiculous. So basically one of my elephants is about equivalent to like 5 of their levies, and probably it's like 1 to 3 as far as it goes to their men-at-arms. So even when I'm outnumbered, it's really not that big of a deal. The thing that I'm trying to deal with is how I get claims on everything. But again, even that problem was solved for me by my previous generations marrying into the family. I have claims all over the world somehow, and I'm going to cash in on all of them. Prince Aegon III has conquered so much that the kingdom of the future has simply transitioned into the empire. The only empire that should exist here, which is actually not true. So let's get into this a little bit. My goal here is not to control the entire Indian continent. My goal here is to conquer literally everything and then in the end give it away to my family members. And my big goal here is that there are 3 kingdoms in this entire map. And I want to form all 3 of those kingdoms, and then I want to balance the balance of power, so I basically have 3 of my sons owning all 3 of the kingdoms. Whereas I will give everything away and kind of recede back to my original borders while I let my family members rule the rest of the world for me. And the nice part is, we have such a strong economy, plus on top of that, the conqueror trait makes everything cheaper, men-at-arms and building and everything. So we don't have to skimp on continuing our development. As you'll see here, I'm constantly building in just about every single holding that we have, even the temples, really pouring. We're extracting the money from the entire rest of the continent and we're siphoning it into this little tiny island to make it as powerful as possible. So this is actually boosting our development even more. And after 10 long years of conquering, we are finally looking like we are controlling the entire world, and it's time to divide up our empire into 3 empires, actually, and I'm going to rename each one so they're easy to identify, and then I'm going to give them away to my sons. And that's where we pick up here. You can see the realm is shattered. We have Samrat Vape God up controlling the western lands. And then we have Hoops of the Iron Cross, who is a Catholic. He saw the holy light as he became an emperor. In the entire world, there are only 2 people who are Catholic, my son and his bishop. So we're going to see if he can form his own Catholic realm, and his family is going to spiral off into their own little adventure while we continue in on our little island of Sri Lanka here. And just to do a little development check here, we're in the year 1018, so about 200 years after the start date, and the development in the northern parts of the realm are lower than when we started. There were 2 rounds of conquerors. There was the first round and then my round of conquering, which dropped the development. The average development in the northern lands is about 15, whereas my highest is 60 at this point. And most of the development on the entire island is in the high 30s and 40s. So the development in my capital is 6 times as high as the average development in the entire world. I mean, it's not only that we're of a higher development, the rest of the world is actually, the rest of the world's getting dumber as we're getting smarter. So the kingdom of the future really is the kingdom of the future here, and we're unlocking gunpowder and bombards here soon, while the rest of the world, they're still fighting with regular bowmen and like default men-at-arms. But you guys have all played Crusader Kings before, so you know what comes next. It's time to die as King Aegon III. In only 20 short years of conquest, he conquered the entire world, he reformed the faith, he skyrocketed the development of his home county, as well as gifting entire chunks of the world to his children. He also reformed the culture and made it so you could have court eunuchs. So succession in the future is going to be even easier because any kid essentially from now on that's not born with really good traits is going to get castrated. Sorry about that. But our development is going to crest over the 60s and get into the 70s here. And as Aegon III reaches the twilight of his life, I just decided to send him on a crazy fucking adventure, and I basically hit every holding in the entire world. The entire trip takes multiple years, and eventually he gets back a better man than he started because I got a shitload of traits. So he actually ends up living longer than I expected. But after only 24 years, a short reign, he finally dies of old age. And for some reason, my kid is called Aegon II, so I'm actually going to change that later on. But Aegon IV now takes the throne as this game is starting to wind to an end. You see there, I declared 20 offensive wars in my lifetime, probably more than every other person on the throne combined. And even though Aegon IV is a conqueror, he's not going to do any conquering. We're sticking to our development, and I'll show you why. Look at that. It's 9 development up in the north, and I have 75. At this point, we know we've won. The game is over. Nobody can pose any significant threat to us for multiple reasons. So the first is our income. Well, we're making 400 gold per month, so our income is no longer a problem. We have basically infinite money. Our succession is locked down because, number one, we're able to make our kids eunuchs if we want to get rid of any of our children in succession. And also, we changed our succession laws to be hereditary rather than a vote in our administrative government, which makes it even better. We have the best buildings possible already unlocked, and many of them are built. There's really not a lot to do after this point. The major threats could be if the two brothers combined into a single army and marched on us, but even then, we would absolutely crush them because we have an unlimited income, which means we can hire every mercenary. But on top of that, we have the craziest buffs on our military, which makes our elephants like plus 800 damage or something stupid like that. So even if all the stars aligned and they did try to march on the capital, we would annihilate that army with these elephants. So they don't even have a chance. So what Aegon IV is going to do is just continue to build and make sure the realm is secure for his future generations. But honestly, I had a great time doing this run. I think this was about 200, maybe 300 in-game years. I'm not going to do the math. I'm sure somebody else can. We went through multiple generations, and this was just extremely fun to do. Playing as Sri Lanka is super overpowered, but as you can see, it's so hard for me to stick to a challenge. It really is. At the end of the day, first I started vassalizing my neighbors, and then once I got the conqueror trait, I think we all understood that the future of this realm would be very, very different moving forward. So, to end this video off like I usually do, I hand the reins over to the AI for 200 years. And this is what the world looks like 200 years later. My son of the Iron Cross actually did a very good job of converting huge swaths of the land to Catholicism. A lot of people started hybridizing our culture because our culture was so far ahead, but for the most part, every significant ruler in the world is a descendant of my dynasty. My main guy is absolutely unbelievably stacked. He has crazy stats, and every subsequent generation also has crazy stats because my kids went and fornicated with basically everybody in the realm. So they sadly added their super good inheritable traits to the general gene pool and just pretty much upped the intelligence of the entire world. But as you can see here, after 200 years of AI rule, the empire is still more or less in a very good place, and our family dynasty is still on top. I don't think I show it here, but after 200 years, the development on the entire island is basically at the max level at 100, and now even the rest of the world itself is starting to catch up to the island of the future. You can see here we have 96 development in a lot of places. So places are so fortified that they're not getting sacked enough for the development to tank. So we've reached the point in the game where there's no going back. You really can't reach a dark age after this where everybody's militaries are so advanced and the defenses are so advanced. I don't think there's anywhere for the development to go but up. This was so much fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, you're one of my #1 fans. I'm your #1 fan. You're just like me. I love watching Crusader Kings videos, and I'd love to know what you think of this format, where I play the game and then I go back and talk over it rather than getting my live reactions. I like doing it this way because I'm not wasting your time. I don't want to just throw in every time that I scream into the microphone during a playthrough. I want to sit back and have a more of a reflection on the game rather than moment to moment, play by play. But I would love to know what you guys think of this format. It takes me more time, but I think the quality is a lot better. So I'm curious, what do you guys think? What do you think I should do on my next challenge? And I will see you guys in the next video.